All right, so now we're going to talk about Gregor Mendel and Punnett squares. So Gregor Mendel was considered the father of genetics, and he was an Austrian monk who studied pea plants. And so, why did he use pea plants? Well, the reason he used pea plants is because they're easy to grow. There are many different types, and he was able to control their mating. Right. So here you see. This is basically what he was doing with the pea plants. If you don't know, you can always take the male pollen and put it on the female flower, and then you grow right here these pea pods. And so um, right here you have this little image, and it's basically just showing you kind of what we talked about, right? You can tell that these yellow ones would be the dominant ones, and this green one right here would be the recessive one, right? So um, here you have P1 generation. It basically just means the parents, right? And then you have the F1 generation. It's the first generation of offspring. And so remember, offspring are just basically the babies that the parents have. And then the F2 generation is the second generation of offspring, right? So here you see the parents, then you have that first generation of offspring, and then the second generation of offspring. Same thing with the plants, right? You would have the parental generation, then the first generation of offspring, and then the second generation of offspring here. So, why do the traits for shortness disappear in the F1 generation? Right. So, you see right here, you have the parent generation, you have a tall one, and you have a short one. Right. But then in that F1 generation, the next thing you get are two tall plants. Right. And then when you get to the F2 generation, then all of a sudden the short ones appear again. Right. And so people say sometimes things skip a generation. Well, why is that? Right. Why is it that things skip a generation? And that's what we'll see right now. So Mendel's conclusion, genetic information controls how traits are passed down from parents, right? So it's these genes that we talked about earlier that are responsible for like the traits that show up. So one factor can mask or dominate or hide another factor, right? So this is what we talked about earlier. You have these two, remember, but they're the same. In this case, both are capital letters. So homozygous dominant. And again, dominant just means you have that capital letter, right? And then here you have homozygous recessive, homo because they are the same, little a, but recessive because they are lowercase, right? And then here you have heterozygous, and heterozygous just means hetero again means different. So you have a different one because you have a capital one and a lowercase one, or a dominant one and a recessive one. And so you see these right here where it's pointing these red arrows, this dominant allele right here, this A, is going to mask or cover up or dominate this little a right here, this recessive A, right? So you will see right here that the red color of cherries is the dominant color, right? And this yellow colored cherries, you need both of these recessive, homozygous recessive, for yellow cherries to show up. Right, so it's just saying that the red, this dominant A, is going to mask or dominate this little a. So the principle of dominance. Some alleles are dominant and some alleles are recessive, and that's what we're talking about, right? And the dominant one is usually represented with a capital letter, and the recessive one is usually represented by a lowercase letter, right? So these first genes right here, you see there is a big P and a big P, right? So if they're the same, they are homo. If they are capital, they are dominant. So homozygous dominant, right, for the dominant allele. So the genotype is homozygous dominant. Here in this gene, you have a recessive A, again, lowercase a. Here you have a lowercase a. And since they're both lowercase or recessive, they are homozygous recessive, right? Homozygous for the recessive allele. Then here you have big B, a dominant one, and little b here, a recessive one. So since you have a dominant and a recessive, those are different. And remember, hetero means different. And so in this case, they are heterozygous. Remember, when it's heterozygous, you don't have to say dominant or recessive because you have one of each. So just heterozygous. So principles of segregation. One allele equals one letter, right? And so that's, again, the letter is just representing like a gene. Right? And so one allele is given by each parent from the sperm or the egg cell. Two alleles are a gene pair, right? So two alleles means that one came from the mom and one came from the dad, right? So in this case, you have this chromosome, this dominant A and this recessive A. It could be either way, but let's just say this one comes from the mom, this one comes from the dad, right? And so that's kind of what you're seeing right here in segregation. That's why I was saying that eventually these chromosomes will split up when sperm is being created in the male and eggs are being created in the female. They will eventually segregate or split up. And that's why kids come out very different from their parents sometimes, is because it's basically like you're shuffling all of the genes around, and the kids will come out different because of all that shuffling that happens. Right. So steps for completing a monohybrid cross. So this is what's called Mendelian genetics, right? So in Mendelian genetics, this is we can do these things called Punnett squares. And for this, it creates two sets of gene pairs for the P generation, for the parents, right? And so the letters that should be used in each gene pair come from the first letter of the name of the dominant trait. So here you see right here, this is the male symbol right here. So this is showing that this is coming from the father. So the father has the gene, the alleles big B, little b. And then the mom, she has the, so this is a female symbol right here. And male and flowers is a pollen. So the pollen is a male, like reproductive part. And the pistil is a female reproductive part, right? So the pollen has to get inside the pistil to make baby plants. And so the mother has also a big B, little b, right? So the mother is heterozygous and the father is heterozygous. So to set up a Punnett square, you need these four boxes right here. And when crossing alleles in a Punnett square, always put the capital letters first, right? So that's why we have the big B, little b, big B, little b. So basically, we're just making these four boxes right here. And outside of these 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes, you're just going to put the one parent here and one parent here. And that's what we have, right? So let's look at some examples. So here you have the father's genes up top, big B, little b, and here you have the mother who is homozygous recessive, right? Little b, little b. The dad is heterozygous, big B, little b. So, whoops. So let's go ahead and fill this out right here. And so let me go ahead and put this here. And so in this case, you always put the one on the capital letter first, right? So in this case, you have a big B and a little b. So let's go ahead and put that here, right? Because you get one of these big B's. So let's put the big B here. And then in this case, you have a little b. So we'll put a little b right here. Let me see if I can make this. Oh, I guess my paid subscription ran off, but yeah, so big B, little b right here. So here, and let me try this version right here. So in this case, you have a little b and a little b, right? So this box right here, little b, and then here, little b. So we'll put those here, little b, little b. Okay. And then here in this box, we bring down this big B right here. So we'll put a big B right here. And then here you have this little b, so we'll put this little b right here. And then in this last box right here, you have this little b and you have this little b. So we'll put this little b right here. I'll put this little b right here. All right. So if this is, and this B could mean different things. It can mean brown hair. It can mean blue eyes. It could mean different things, right? It all depends what we're looking for right here. But in this case, this one would be heterozygous because it has a big B and a little b. And let me do this real quick. Let me put this just so it looks the same as all the other boxes. You have this big B, right, that came from here, and then this little b right there. So in this case, this is a heterozygous, hetero different because you have a dominant B and a recessive B. Here you have these two recessive Bs. So this is homozygous recessive, homo because they're the same, recessive because they're lowercase. And in this case, you have one of each. So these are heterozygous. And then in this case, since you have two lowercase ones, they are homozygous recessive. Right, so let's say that this B was for brown eyes. So the big B means brown eyes. And then if it had these two little b's, it would be blue eyes. So if they had 4 kids here, then the chances would be that 2 of them show up with brown eyes and 2 of them show up with blue eyes. Right, because again, the blue eyes will only show up if there are 2 recessive ones there. If there's ever a capital one like this, a dominant one, then that's what is going to show up. All right, so practice writing gene pairs. So homozygous dominant freckles, if you're talking about homozygous dominant, The F right there is highlighted, so we're going to go with the F. Homozygous dominant just means, let me put this right here, homozygous dominant. Homo means same, dominant means capital letters. So it just means you would have two capital letters. A widow's peak is dominant to straight line hair, right? So big W means widow's peak. How would you write homozygous recessive? Straight hairline. So just remember, homozygous recessive means they're both going to be lowercase. And since we're talking about W right here, it would just be two lowercase W's. And then here, heterozygous curly hair. Remember, heterozygous means different, right? So that means you're going to have one of each. So if you're talking about this letter C, one of each is a one capital one and one lowercase, right? Or one dominant and one recessive. So a detached earlobe are dominant to attached earlobes. How would you write homozygous recessive attached earlobes? So this is the important, right? Homozygous recessive. Homo means same, recessive means lowercase, so that means they're both going to be lowercase, right? And the letter we're dealing with here is D, so let's write two lowercase d's. And that is how you would write these gene pairs, right? So yeah, so there you go, right? You have the big F, because they're dominant, homozygous dominant, a widow's peak, and that's this part right here is the important part right here, right? Homozygous recessive. That means homo the same, recessive lowercase. So two lowercase letters. Heterozygous means hetero means different, right? So that means you have one big one little one dominant one recessive one. And then here they're asking you for homozygous recessive. Remember, homo means the same, recessive means lowercase. So that just means you would have two lowercase right here, D's. All right, so let's look at the sample problem. Having freckles is a dominant trait. No freckles is a recessive trait. So mom has freckles and dad has none. And each parent has a homozygous genotype, right? So homozygous means the same, right? The two alleles in the genes are the same. And so don't worry about this picture because this picture is kind of saying the opposite of what the word problem is saying. So let's just worry about this part right here. Right? So mom has freckles and dad has none. And each parent has a homozygous genotype, right? So that means homozygous means they're both going to be the same, right? And because mom has freckles, hers are going to be homozygous dominant. That means capital F, capital F. Dad is homozygous recessive, and that means lowercase f, lowercase f. Right, so this is the Punnett square right here. And so the Punnett squares, what it's saying right here is this is the mom's genotype, right? Big F, and this is the dad's genotype, little f, little f. All right, and so here we have the Punnett square for this, right? We're going to work this out and see what happens. So remember, this is going to be the mom right here. This is going to be the dad. And then these four squares just represent what kind of offspring they can have, right? Or what kind of babies they can possibly have. And so when we do this right here, let me bring this, the writing out. So when we have this first square right here, what happens? What's the probability of this one right here? So you always use a capital letter first. Whoops, big F. And then in this case, little f. And so that's happening here, right? Because there's a big F and a little f. And then this square right here, you have this big F and this little f. So let's put this big F here. And then this little f right here. And then this square right here, you're going to bring down this big F and then this little f. So we'll do this big F here and then this little f right here. And then over here, same thing, right? You're going to have a big F and you're going to have a little f. And so what you see right here is this, right? You have a big F, little f, big. So basically all four of these are heterozygous, right? And these again could be the possibility for the offspring. And so each parent's genotype, each inner square is filled with a possible genotype for their child. Right? And so this is all right, so this is what I was just saying, right? Is that the percent distribution of genotypes, phenotypes? So the genotypes is that they're all going to be heterozygous, right? They all have this big F, little f. They're all heterozygous. Phenotype, 100% of them are going to have freckles, right? Because again, this big F means they're going to have freckles. If all four have that big F, that dominant F, that means 100% of them are going to have freckles. Right, so what happens if both mom and dad have freckles and their genotypes are heterozygous? So the genotypes are this right here. Big F, little f, big F, little f, right? Both heterozygous. So then we just work this one out right here, right? And so if you have this big F and this big F right here, so let's just bring that, big F, big F. So there is that one. Then in the second square right here, you're going to bring in, and remember, always start with a capital letter. So one big F, one little f. Oops. And then here you're going to have this big F and this little f. So we'll bring the big F and then this little f. And then in this last square, you're going to have this little f and this little f. Right, so let me just do this little f right here, this little f right here. Right, and so now you see there's something different going on. Right, now you have a homozygous dominant, heterozygous, heterozygous, and homozygous recessive. So right off the bat, you realize that not all these kids are going to have freckles. Right, so here you see this, that the genotypes, 25% are homozygous dominant, right? This one right here is homozygous dominant. Then you see 50% are heterozygous, and this one is heterozygous, and this one is heterozygous. And then this no freckles one, the one with two little f's, homozygous recessive, this one is going to be 25%. So 1/4 for the genotype right here. Homozygous dominant is 25%. This heterozygous is 50% because of this one and this one. And then homozygous recessive is 25%. But if you're talking about their phenotypes and which ones are going to have freckles and which ones no freckles, remember, as long as there's just one dominant F there, they are going to have freckles. So dominant F, dominant F, dominant F. So 3 of these, which makes 75%, is going to be freckles. This one right here, little f, or homozygous recessive, is 25%. So only 25% of the kids will not have freckles.